välkomna till Wine Table. Äntligen är vi tillbaka med lite livesänd vinprovning. Vi har ju en del producenter på besök här och ikväll så har vi faktiskt fått äran att ha en av dem i studion. Från Vintaj och Hacienda Lopez de Haro. Vi kommer att hålla på med den här provningen i ungefär en timme, så passa på att ställa så mycket frågor som ni kan under den här tiden. Ni har ju ingen bättre chans än det här egentligen för att reda ut alla begrepp på temat som vi har ikväll. För er som ställer frågor så lottar vi också ut vinglas och ikväll så har vi ett syraglas från serien av Riedel som vi lottar ut. Det är inte svårare än att ni skriver en fråga i kommentarsfältet eller ställer en kommentar för den delen, så kommer vi sen att lotta ut då 2 glas till en lycklig vinnare. Och vi kommer alldeles strax att få träffa Richi Arambarri Perez som är vd och vinmakare på Vintaj. Han är här för att presentera konceptet El Pacto. Men innan vi dyker djupare in i det så ska jag ge er en liten producentpresentation. Hacienda Lopez de Haro ligger i beläget mitt i hjärtat av La Rioja, strax utanför byn San Vicente de la Sonsiera. Man började sin produktion i början på 2000-talet och har sedan dess tillverkat moderna viner med lite sådär klassisk inspiration. De första vinerna i serien El Pacto kom 2009 och tanken är att liksom återgå lite grann till den traditionella vinkulturen där naturen och kvaliteten och hantverket står i första rummet. Man kan se de här vinerna lite grann som en hyllning till vad Rioja en gång faktiskt var i tiden, då det var små vinbönder som dominerade hela det här området från gamla byar. Och här för att berätta mer har vi alltså Richi. Welcome!
Thank you very much. A pleasure.
Yeah, very nice to have you in the studio.
It's a pleasure for me.
How are you?
I'm great.
You're
I'm
great.
happy to be in Stockholm.
Yes.
So.
It's a nice city, even though it's raining tonight.
Yeah, well, we were expecting a different weather, but I learned that it changed very quickly. So it's fine.
It does. So I just gave the viewers a short introduction about Hacienda Lopez de Haro and also the project El Pacto. But I think before we taste the wines that we are going to taste, we have 4 of them.
Fantastic.
I think maybe we should start a little bit from the beginning with the region that we're in. So this is now Rioja.
Exactly.
So what can you say briefly about Rioja?
Well, so Rioja, it's one of the most historical region in Spain. We know that wine has been around not just for self-consumption, but for a business for over 2,000 of years. Okay, and the reality of Rioja is that it was a big change about let's say 200 years ago, when it's been always a very famous region all over Spain, but about 200 years ago, Rioja started to look to France. Okay, so there were some families that they thought, okay, we are selling the wine only in our neighbor regions, but we should start to look to Paris, London, maybe Stockholm, okay, elsewhere.
Some exports.
So export, exactly. And that was the time when people saw in Bordeaux a different way of doing wine. This was the birth of what classical Rioja is about. Everybody knows about Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva, this what we call vinos de estilo, so stylistic wine, let's say, okay, which was a trend that the story, it's about 200 years. That was a boom for a region. That was a moment when Rioja, thanks to the railway, okay, started to become international, let's say, okay? So it's a region that we are a very small region all over Spain, okay? So we have only 300,000 people, but it's, the core of fine wines in Spain, okay? The project that we're gonna talk about, it's going back to our roots, even before that time, okay?
So can you just quickly explain, because I had a bit of, I shouldn't say problem, but with all of your companies, because Hacienda Lopez de Haro, that's the mother company.
It's the original winery, let's say.
And then you have this project, which is now something you want to achieve something with this project.
Yeah.
And it used to be sort of part of the main winery, but now it's
so it
sort of stands on
started
its own.
as only one wine and now has become a winery itself.
Okay.
So just for you to understand a little bit our trip, so our origin is Hacienda Lopez, that by the way is this example of classical wines, so blending wine, grapes from different regions all over Rioja, and making this Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva, it's the Lopez de Haro winery. Then we started to travel, so actually in the last 20 years we have started a new winery in Ribera del Duero, a new winery in Toro, and a new winery in Navarra. Those are the three main movements. And Viñedos El Pacto, even it started being only one wine, more than 15 years ago. Right now has become a winery itself. And what we've done is to try to recover a style of wine that was in Rioja for ages, and now it's, that sometimes the old is the new. Okay, so now we are trying with recovering this ancient style to create a different way of Rioja wines.
I think because I've met a few Spanish producers recently from different areas, and this seems to be a trend in many places, that you want to go back to what was usually the case in the region, old varieties, old ways of making wine. And I suppose it's a bit of a reaction towards the bigger industry that is maybe...
I think that Spain has been a region that we've been... So I'm going to tell you an anecdote for you to understand. In the 90s, in Spain, we were calling the French grape varietals las variedades mejorantes. Let's say the improvement grape varietals. So we were thinking that Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, they were better grape than our own grapes, okay? So then, it was a time that we didn't really believe in what our roots are, okay? I think that in the last, let's say, 25, 30 years, we have become much more proud of what we have. We've made our research in history, in what our roots, not only roots of the terroir, but also what our ancestors they were doing. And this, let's say, evolution or revolution, depending how you want to call it, has happened, not only in Rioja, but all over Spain. So I think that right now, in the market, you can find a much more diverse, authentic, real, and interesting wine proposal from Spain than, let's say, 40, 50 years ago. And this is thanks to a new generation of talented people that they have studied, that we've traveled abroad. We've traveled to Italy, to France, to other regions that, let's say, it's true that they've had more pride of themselves for much longer. And I think that now Spain is finally believing in ourselves.
So it's a matter of self-confidence in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And knowledge and many other things. But the first thing is to say, okay, what my grandfather was doing was not bad, was actually something very interesting. So let's try to make it in a much more sophisticated way, but looking back to our past.
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I've tasted all the wines before now, just to, give myself an opinion, about it, and I think it's quite interesting to see all of the wines and how they perform. Okay. So I think that we should start with the first wine, which is a white wine. You already have some, but I can give you some more if you want.
Please.
Yeah, why not?
It's always good.
it's after 7, so I think we're all allowed. And so this is your white wine, and I think maybe you should explain a bit to the viewers the composition of grapes in this wine, because this is a mix of different local varieties. Yeah.
So first, to get a little bit of context of the wine and of the winery, as I was saying, what we are trying here is to reflect how the wines were done, and that explains the grape varietals. So you have to understand that until nurseries arrived to Spain. Okay. When I mean nurseries, is that today you plant a vineyard and you can plant 3,000 clones of the same, 3,000 Richi's, of the same. Before, what they were doing is to pick up every vine, and they were planted 3,000 different individuals, So here, all the vineyards that are from Viñedos El Pacto and to Pacto del Alto Najerilla are vineyards that are from the 1970s and before, and they are all field blends. That means that
they're a mix of...
It's a mix of grape varietals.
So, sorry, but to interrupt, but you say you have all old vineyards, or most of them are old vineyards. How did you manage to get those vineyards? are all of them yours? Or,
So this is 100% state-owned. So they're vineyards that we have inherited from our families, or that we've been purchasing in the last 20 years.
And has it been easy to buy old vineyards?
Well, it's depend on the time. I mean, there are moments that families they want to do something else, so you have to be always, taking a look of opportunities. Is never easy, but it can happen in Rioja and in other wine regions.
So the grapes in this wine then?
It's Viura is the number one grape, but then in these field blends you will find Garnacha Blanca, Malvasia, Jaina, which is a very undiscovered grape varietal, and some others that, very complicated names in Spain, but the most important is the Viura.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the great things of this wine is that as the vineyards are old, this Viura, they get this level of structure that this wine has.
But you also have some whole bunch maceration in this wine, right?
Well, we play with a little bit of whole bunch during very short period of time, but we like to play sometimes to get a little bit more volume, a little bit more. We play more with the lees.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit with the whole bunch, but it's more with the play with the lees to try to get this more oily style.
Yeah, the texture.
Exactly.
And broadness.
And so I think this wine, the region where Alto Najerilla, which is what means this wine, this region, which is basically where my family is coming from, this region is highly in elevation. The type of terroir, it's a ferrous clay red soil, and normally gives high acidity wines. So I think that this wine has a combination of what the old vineyards. This is a combination of 8 vineyards, all old, and it has this structure, but at the same time this this finesse, this elegance, and this freshness.
And the fatness that I can feel already on the nose, that you say comes from the lees.
It's a combination. Its part is thanks to these old vineyards.
Yeah, of course, because of the concentration.
And then part is the vinification, which is basically this whole bunch, this tiny play with the lees, this aging. Okay, we age this wine in 5,000 liter vats, oak vats, okay, which gives some structure to.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's, what is happening now in Spain is that it's been a revolution in white wines. We've been always looked at as a red wine country.
Yeah.
And wines like this show the real potential that we are not only a red wine country.
No, absolutely not. And I think you have this little grip, which I really like. It's not a bitterness in a bad way, but it's almost like a grape skin type of grip on the tongue that is, and I can just see myself drinking something like this to food, because it's really food wine, at least to me. Well, I can probably drink half a bottle without food, but it's definitely a gastronomic wine.
Yeah, this combination of having this fatty style, of course, this is a very refined. So I think in the world of, let's say, like Chardonnay, sometimes you can have this fat. When I talk about wine, I think this is a fuller body, but it's very refined, and I think that makes a wine to be very versatile.
So when you have a bottle of this, what would you cook? Do you cook?
Yep,
okay.
I like to cook, and this, for example, what I would rather do with this would be to have maybe maybe a plate of pasta, could be to start with, okay, or. Today we were having lunch in a wonderful place, and we were having with oyster. Okay, that would be a nice thing too.
Just plain oysters?
Well, it was marinated. I don't know how to describe very well what we had. But it was wonderful. And for example, I think it's a great thing. Or, with shellfish. So, for example, I love to make, on the grill to have this what we call the las gambas rojas, the red shrimps from Denia, from this little corner between Ibiza, Alicante, and so these shrimps with this, just with salt,
delicious.
That play.
I have a bit of an obsession when it comes to schnitzel.
Okay.
Most of the viewers know that I eat schnitzel quite often.
Mhm.
You know, like a Wiener schnitzel,
I love a
but
schnitzel.
not with veal. I actually make it with
Mhm.
pork because I think it's
Mhm.
tastier. A wine like this to a
Mhm.
crunchy
Mhm.
schnitzel
Mm.
that's been boiling in butter for a long time,
Mhm.
and maybe some lemon butter, some capers.
That could be a nice thing.
Yeah, I
To
think
have
so.
with.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful wine. How can a wine like this? How does it age?
Well, actually, this is a good question. Well, we know that these wines, because even today, Rioja has, the white Riojas are not that famous. We have really old white Rioja, so you still can find today in, some stores wines from the first part of the 20th century. Okay, and we know that the wines age really well. I think that this one in particular, with the level of acidity it has, I think that you can leave it for 10 years and no problem. And I would say that even probably evolve even more. But it's still to know, because the first vintage of this wine was 2020. So we'll see.
We'll see. You don't have a big
Yeah.
record or long record. So we actually got one question now from Anna. And she says, so the terroir, is that coming through as much in the white wines as in the red wines?
The terroir, absolutely. Yeah, both in white and red. For example, I think that the terroir in this wine, what is giving is this minerality, this saltiness, we have where we are here, which you have to understand, we are right on the limit of agriculture in our region. So the next is the mountain. So we have mountains up to 2,000 meters. So the combination of the terroir and the climate, that we are north facing and we have a lot of influence from the Atlantic. Even we are we are not in the sea, but we are like, let's say 80 kilometers from the sea. Thanks that we have low mountains ahead, we have a lot of cold weather, particularly like cold nights in the summer. So even in Spain, we can be cold in the night in the summer. And I think this combination of this type of terroir gives this minerality and this very salty style.
No, it's a beautiful wine, and I actually got a bit hungry.
Okay,
thinking of my schnitzel, even though I actually had one last night. That's
okay.
That's me.
Good.
So I think that we should just move on to the first red wine.
Okay, sure.
And we had a bit of a discussion about glasses because this is actually a Riesling glass, which you thought was fine.
Yeah.
And then I had a suggestion for the next one, which was basically the same. And you were quite polite because you said, yeah, that's okay. But you wanted to have the next wine in a Pinot Noir glass. Yeah. So I'm going to pour you some of the first red one. And because this is, to me at least, a very, very unique type of wine. And it feels like, if you're talking about what you want to achieve with the whole El Pacto series, this wine for me sort of embodies the whole thing when it comes to what grapes we have in the wine and also what you mentioned before, a field blend.
Exactly. So, well, this wine is basically a perfect example of going back to history.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that the region where this wine is coming from and where my family is from is this cold region that when my father is 83, so when he was 30 years old, there was some years that the red grapes didn't arrive to even 10 degrees maturation. Yeah. Okay. So what happened on that time is that they were planting all together reds and whites, co-plantation, field blend.
Yep.
And for making the most similar thing to a red, what they were doing is to harvest all together this red and white, macerated not like a rosé, but like a red. So let's say for 3-4 days, not like a full body red, but for let's say a light style of red. And they were having this, I always say that this wine is a red with the soul of a white.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's beautiful.
And the name, it's forgotten again, like I was saying with the grape varietals.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, in the 90s, Spain, so this region, stopped doing this style of wine, which is called ojo gallo.
Yeah.
Okay. And this style, we wanted to recover it
And why did they stop? Because
because, they didn't believe in what they were doing. So they thought, no, this is a style of wine that we have to, that we drink in the region. We have to look to our neighbors.
okay,
And
so
no
they
one
wanted
does
to be
this.
more international and
Exactly.
not, yeah.
So, and I think that, we have to be proud of our history.
Absolutely.
I think that this style of wine, this combination of Garnacha, which is the main red grape, and Viura, this combination creates a style of wine that is very contemporary. Okay, I think that nowadays for the new food scene that we have, there is much more full reds than elegant reds in the market, and actually this reminds me a little bit the Pinot Noir world.
It does. So, I mean, obviously you were right about the glass. It was just me not thinking properly, I think. But it's got this very, very light and beautiful, almost red berry nose.
Yeah,
A bit of perfume.
exactly.
But also there's a spiciness in this.
Exactly.
Can you hear the sound? I'm not sure if the people outside can hear the sound, but
Okay.
this is now the ice cream truck.
Okay.
Very
all right.
popular in Sweden. So
Okay.
that's the melody that you need to
Okay.
recognize to get your ice cream. Anyway, back to the wine.
Yeah.
So as you say rightly, I think a style of wine like this is really the center of what people want to drink nowadays, because they're going back from the heavy oaked, maybe more traditional type of Riojas with American oak and all of that,
Exactly.
and long bottle aging. And this is a more contemporary style, even though it's
Well,
it's a very old
Exactly.
traditional way of making it.
So it's like going back to the wardrobe of your granddad and then finding a jacket that you say, wow, this is wonderful today. okay?
Vintage.
It's vintage. So it's the same philosophy. And I think that this is very, very contemporary, very refreshing style of red. But it's true that this is something that has to be explained. Because this style of American oak is what people will expect all over the world, and that the previous people that they were coming to Stockholm, to London, to Paris, to everywhere to talk, they've been for decades explaining the same in Rioja, and now this has to be explained. So thank you for having my voice here.
My pleasure. So do you use any oak? Like
Yes.
old vats in that case? Or do you use
no.
any new oak as
So
well?
half of the wine stays in concrete,
Yeah.
okay, and the other half in large oak vats in 5,000 liters. So therefore, it has a little bit of aging that is more for this micro-oxygenation, for this refining of the wine. Both the micro-oxygenation happen in the concrete and the oak, but it has this, this spiciness, this complexity, but the purity of the wine, the fruit, is what stays and remains.
And where does the oak come from? Because Richard actually asked, so what from what area does the oak come from?
Well, mostly, in this particular case, the only one vat that we use, because the volume we have is small, it's from France. But for the whole Viñedos El Pacto, we have a mixture between mainly France and sometimes Eastern European.
Yeah,
And a very small percentage of American, but it's only in one of the wines.
Okay. So, well, you talk about having a very small production, and I think I read somewhere that the first one was 9,000 bottles.
Yeah,
That was
depending on the
white,
vintage,
yeah.
I think, probably this one would be 9,000. I think the latest we are doing a little bit more, like maybe 15,000, but in that level.
And this one, same?
This vintage, I think, is a little bit less. I think it's probably 8,000 or something like that.
So will you expand, you think?
I mean, we don't have that many vineyards to expand with, but we keep trying to work, purchasing, and Viñedos El Pacto is a very small project. So Lopez is a different scale. It's a more international wine. Okay, so we sell all over the world, but Viñedos El Pacto is something new and is something much more exclusive.
So again, refreshing. Very easy to drink in a good way. This one, I said maybe I I would prefer with food. This one I can easily just drink.
For example, for me, is my red wine in the summer.
Yeah.
So I enjoy a lot, you know, just by itself. I love to sail, and I like to drink reds even in the summer.
Yeah.
And this is the one I like, and I bring in magnums. We haven't done that many magnums, but I try to have for myself with when we are with friends, and it's a bit chilled. It's a perfect alternative, but I think that also with a paella, in front of the sea, it's something lovely. For I'm a more fan of meat paellas than fish paellas. So the Valenciana.
So what do you have in your meat paella?
So actually, now Spain is becoming very innovative in that. But now there is a new trend actually in our one restaurant that we have 3 restaurants.
Oh, really?
Apart from and the most popular paella is arroz de chuletón,
which
so
is
with steak. Okay, I know it's a bit crazy.
Okay.
Okay, but it's we make the el fondo, so that that for making the paella you need to put
the stock.
Yeah. And we use all the meat. Okay, so we play with the I don't know how is the name, the interior of the bone.
Oh,
okay.
the bone marrow.
Exactly, which is super flavor. Okay,
Lots of umami.
And then when you finish, we have this stock that we cook. So we cook before, we make the rice, and then on top we put this steak. And it's I know it's a bit crazy, but
no, I like it.
Wonderful. Okay, that is wonderful. So,
I'm gonna give it a go. Maybe you can give me a recipe so I can
try
this out for summer.
Or if anyone wants to try, we have our restaurant is in Formentera, this little island next to Ibiza. So it's called Fandango. So if anyone wants to try,
you're all invited.
They will have Pacto Rioja, and with this weather, I'm already traveling.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. So, in terms of price, because these wines are not available in Sweden at the moment, I think they're quite decently priced. I talked to the importer as well, and they would be something like 249, 250 Swedish, which is a really nice price. How does the price? If you look at price in Rioja, is it? Do you have a view on that?
I do.
You do,
a view.
yeah. Okay.
So actually, with this first wine, I always explain when I have visits from importers. I always make it because I explain the wine, and they're like, "Wow, I love this wine! It's so wonderful." And I always say, "Okay, this wine has only one problem, and is that if it's because it's south of the Pyrenees, it's half of the price it should be.
Sure.
Okay, so it's too cheap. I mean, it's a it's a joke, but it's not a joke.
No, I get it.
I think that Spain, we need to believe in what we do, and we need to, because it's part of. So we have a little crisis in the countryside in Spain, and is that so there is not that generational change. So in this case, are owned by us, the vineyards, but it's a problem that the younger generation doesn't want to follow working on the countryside, and it's because it's not a good way of living. And I think that Spain actually is happening. Spain is getting into the real value we should, but it's. I think actually we normally put in blind tastings with some foreigner wines, and people freak out and say, "Wow, this is wonderful."
And it's too cheap. And talking about too cheap, I think we're going to jump into next wine.
Okay.
And I think this, the third wine in the tasting, the next one that's coming up, is not only the reason for the whole El Pacto project, it's also the reason why we are sitting here today, because it's not for you guys, unfortunately, but for me at least, it's a pre-taste of what is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is now going to be launched at Systembolaget, and for 149, which I think is an absolute bargain.
Well,
so that was me introducing the next one, which is the Rioja, or Sonsierra, you say, the Sonsierra.
Pacto de la Sonsierra.
And this is basically the first wine that you launched in 2009.
Exactly.
So this is a start. This is the baby. This is the foundation of the El Pacto project.
Yeah. So this is why it's called El Pacto, because when we started 2009, okay, it's a pact with our ancestors and the pact with the nature. So all the Viñedos El Pacto wines, they are organic. They are following very ancestral way of farming and minimal intervention in the winery. And I think this is the great example of it. This wine is the one that is coming from a little, so we have a little bit more number of vineyards for this, around 20 different parcels.
So you have
different parcels, all in the Son Sierra region. Son Sierra is the northern part of Rioja, where actually the most famous wines have come in the last 50 years. Okay, it's where Tempranillo is the home base of Tempranillo. Okay,
and is this 100% Tempranillo, or do you have a little bit of?
Exactly, it's the same thing. They are all field blends. So all the vineyards that are into this wine, they are from the 1970s and before. So this is the philosophy. Okay. And so here Tempranillo is the main grape, but then we have little quantities of Garnacha, Graciano, even white grapes.
So you have like 20 vines of Tempranillo, and then beep, there's another one, and then
yeah. It's exactly like that. So you have like 20, and then you have one, and sometimes we don't know even what they are.
Yeah.
So actually we made an analysis on the final wine that we will taste, and we found out Verdejo. That we didn't even know that we had Verdejo in Rioja. So it's of course in small quantities, but it's these treasures, that these old vines that our grandfathers they planted, and that we can enjoy today.
And I mean, obviously they knew what they were doing, because they've done this without technology and all of that. So they have a history of just following, their natural. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then they knew what they were doing, and it's quite obvious that it's a good way of making wine today.
Actually, it's something that I don't want to criticize what our previous generation was, but they were like thinking that what their parents they were doing, they don't know nothing. They knew.
Yeah,
so what we know now is that they knew that they were doing that because it works. Actually, it works. Actually, now new vineyards that we are planting, we are following the same philosophy of plantation that they were doing 2 generations before. So we are making co-plantation. So I think that we have to listen, and this is what we wanted to do with this wine. And it's this field blend. Here we have a great example of what an original style of what Rioja is, that can become super contemporary and super modern.
Yeah. So this is organic, and if you go on to Systembolaget, you will have the green dot, and it's an organic label wine.
Exactly.
So how do you, when you talk about working with nature and your relationship to Mother Nature, how do you do that? What's important for you when it comes to working together with nature?
I think that you have to listen to the vineyard. Okay, we don't expect. One of the problems with the wines is that if you expect to have large volume, so to produce, then you have to keep trying to make things and to give treatments. So when you expect and you are trying to have small volumes, have a small yield per hectare and so on, what we are doing is to minimize the work that we make, trying to make it very sustainable.
Yeah.
Of course. So we have in the history of Viñedos El Pacto that some years we have significant smaller production.
Sure.
Okay, but it's what you can expect. So actually, this is being pure with the philosophy of what we do.
So we got a question again from Rich, and he said, from Anders. How has climate change affected Rioja?
Okay. Well,
I mean, it affects everything.
Well, actually, I explained. Why this style was born is because the red grapes 40 years ago didn't arrive to full maturation.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the reality, what we see is that with these new temperatures, the vineyards we are planting now where my father will have never planted 40 years ago. Okay?
Because of elevation?
Elevation. I mean, the good news that we have in Rioja is that we can go higher. And the probably vineyards that they were fantastic 50 years ago in the valley, they are more Mediterranean, let's say. I mean, it's not to say that are worse, but they have a different style. And if we want to look for this brightness, freshness, clearness, we need to go a little bit higher. And this is what we're doing.
This is a bit off topic, but I had a conversation just the other day with another Spanish producer from Ribera del Duero.
Okay.
And they had bought a vineyard quite a few years ago, high elevation. And at the time, they could not make wine under the DO Ribera del Duero because it was too high.
Okay.
So it was in the legislation, you couldn't be that high. And now, obviously, they sit with this amazing vineyard that is so suitable for the new, climate and everything. So I just thought it was interesting because you have, or the organizations, or what do you say, consejo reguladores, they have to change as well and adapt.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
time.
we need to adapt, and the positive thing is that we know that not 50 years ago, not maybe 200 years ago, but we know that 1,000 years ago, some of these villages that they didn't have vineyard 50 years ago, they used to have vineyards. So that we know that the terroir is, proper for wine. So, it's about, adapting ourselves like everybody has to do. And, it's just, we have to open our minds and to change the rules to try to adapt to it. And this is what we do in Viñedos El Pacto and in other projects of Vintage.
But this is a bit of new oak, isn't it?
Well, it has a mixture.
A little bit.
It has a mixture, yes. It has, a part is second, third, fourth use, and a part of it is new oak. And this is the one that has, of all the wines that we are tasting now, is the one that we are pretending, because at the end, the philosophy on this wine is to have a very fruit-driven, to have a very structured, not full body, but a structured wine, but fresh. And for this, what we are doing is to try to get this pure fruit, but at the same time the vintage is 2021. So we give some time in the barrel and some time in the bottle, because what we want is the wine to be very balanced, very, very all together, let's say. And for that, we need to have some aging on the wine. And Tempranillo also demands a little bit more aging than Garnacha.
Yeah. But you never use the words crianza or...
No. So in this range, even we age the wines, it's a totally different philosophy. Because at the moment that you put crianza or reserva, then
you're back to...
then people are just thinking, okay, this is the style of wine. And what we want here is people to open a little bit and to open their mind to a new Rioja.
So Richard is asking, so it's very interesting that you use the white grapes in the red wines. He says, any specific reason? We had that covered already. But what does it actually do to the wine? It adds freshness, I suppose.
That's a great question. Well, this is something that you could feel, but we could not assure before. But now there are some studies that say that adding white grapes to red wines, first of all, fix the color. So they will fix the color, so the color will remain longer. And of course, because normally white grapes have higher acidity, so they give freshness. So part of this, combination and structure but fresh wine, it's also part of these little quantities of white grapes.
I mean, they do it in the Rhone as well.
Yeah, in Rhone and in
a couple of other places.
Yeah, sure.
Matthias says, how does Tempranillo change in an aromatical and structural way with long maturation in Rioja compared to other Spanish regions?
In long maceration, you said?
No, how it changes. How Tempranillo changes with long maturation in Rioja compared to other regions. Is there a difference?
Oh yeah, of course. And I think
complex question, I suppose.
No, not at all. I mean, like Tempranillo is a
easy
very
question.
It's there's nothing easy in wine, but it's the Tempranillo. It's a great variety that adapts a lot to the different regions. So this is why we have different names of Tempranillo. Tinta de Toro, Tinta del País, Tinta Fina, Ul de Liebre, Tempranillo, blah, blah, blah.
A nightmare for a sommelier student.
I know. And particularly in Rioja, of all, I would say that is the more elegant. Okay, for example, regions in Castilla y León like Ribera del Duero and Toro, Tempranillos are a little bit more rustic, a little bit more full-bodied.
Yeah.
Tinta de Toro in Toro, they normally have even a sweeter tannin. Ribera del Duero has a much tighter tannin, okay, and it's a much fuller body. And in Rioja, even you have old vineyards and in terroir like this, that are some of the best terroirs in the Rioja. The finesse and the elegance, I think, is very recognizable in comparison to other regions. I don't know if I answered well.
Yeah, I think you did.
Okay, I tried.
Matthias, hope you're happy. And Fredrik comes back to the oak treatment, I think, with the American and French oak. Why do you choose the one?
Okay, that's a great question too. Because, normally French and Eastern European, they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
And they are more respectful with the fruit. You don't notice them that much. American oak, first of all, this is a very complex topic, but everything we use is medium toast, not high toast, so we don't want the oakiness to be present. But the American oak gives a little sweet, we use very small percentage, okay? But gives a little sweeter tannin, okay? And makes it very pleasant. So this we play in very small quantities to try to make it elegant, but at the same time very enjoyable.
A little bit of makeup.
Of course, it's like the cooking. Okay, so it's how much salt, how much onion, and everything. So this is a little bit, and this wine is the more consolidated.
Yeah.
So we've been doing now. This vintage will be the 16 vintage. So we know very well the terroir, we know very well the vineyards, and we've been playing. Actually, the style has changed a lot since the beginning. Okay, so we feel much more comfortable on this style, and we want to make something really pure and very unique, but at the same time very enjoyable. Because wine is about to enjoy.
Sure. So food-wise.
Yeah, this one, for example, I know because I drink a lot of this wine, of course, and I normally like to have with these lamb chops.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you know Easter is coming up.
Yeah,
The
so
Easter lamb.
lamb chops are a great alternative for this wine. It comes to my mind, of course, meat. Okay, but it doesn't have to. So I will try to think. For example, I would say that having, for example, some tuna. I would say that tuna.
Yeah.
Okay, seasoned properly, I think could be a great food pairing with this one.
It has a very nice perfume,
Yeah.
especially when it opens up a bit. I think it needed, just some air, and now you can feel all of those almost violet type of
absolutely.
perfume
a lot of
coming.
flowers, a lot of herbs in the forest. So you have these balsamic notes that are very refreshing. When we were starting, remember that I said, okay, only by smelling, I was talking about the wine in that case, but happens a little bit with this one too, is that, refresh me a little bit and all these balsamic notes, these flowers, not only just the red and dark fruits that are typical from Tempranillo, but I think that is, and it's something that adds this is one of the keys of these wines is the polycultivo. So it's that the historical vineyards, they were not just vineyards. So they had vineyards and they have olive trees, ficus trees, and this is part of the game on these vineyards. That is the mixture of different types of plants and fruit plants that are around. And I think this gives also some complexity that the wine has.
Now, for me, definitely a lamb wine. For next week. Could do the lamb chops, that's easy, or a sausage, lamb sausage. Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad too. I'm thinking all the time on Spanish food, so I don't know that much the Swedish kitchen. But for example, with what we call salchichon, which is this sausage with some spices, the meat with the spices, and it's cooked a little bit and cut and hot. I think it's a great food pairing too.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on that one. Okay, I'm getting confused. You need a glass first. Okay. So last wine.
Good.
Which is quite a spectacular wine. And different different label, different feel to it, and also because this is also a single vineyard.
Yeah, it's a singular vineyard here. Why the design is slightly different is because in Viñedos El Pacto, in the pyramid of quality, the base is where we have the hands.
Yeah.
And then as far as we go higher, we're going to, let's say, the Gran Cruz, right? Which is the Viñedos Singulares.
Sure.
So special parcels. And here we want El Pacto to be less important in the label. And we want the parcel to be more important.
Yeah.
This one in particular is a vineyard that was planted half in 1914, half in 1918. So
Fantastic.
It's a centenary vineyard. It's about 1 hectare, so 10,000 square meters, about 5,000 plants. And Garnacha is the main grape, but again, this is a field blend. So you have Tempranillo, Graciano, Garnacha,
maybe white grape.
And some whites, Verdejo, that I said before.
You said,
so this is where Verdejo is. And this here, the terroir, is very particular because it has very little quantity of soil, and below is rock. And the rock, so the above part is ferrous clay, this red soil, but then below is like a mixture of agglomerate and limestone, where the vineyards, the roots, they have to get deep down to find the water.
Yeah.
And makes a very unique style, very small production per hectare because of the combination of the soil and the age. And here what we want is to show the purity of this high elevation.
It's almost like my
Garnacha.
hair is starting to stand up when you said, the vineyard is from 1914 and 1918.
So these have seen, 2 world wars and the Spanish Civil War. So, yeah.
It gives you perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So Per asks, would he call, well, he is you then, would you call this new wave of Rioja a postmodern take on a resurgent atavism? Oh, he's a bit to his forefathers' way of making Rioja wines, and basically that's what you think, I think.
Yeah, well, so I think it's a moment when Rioja there is a new generation that is trusting in the past and try to get a more sophisticated way of what ancient style of wine were. So I think that Rioja is becoming more diverse because I love, by the way, these grandes reservas.
Sure, yeah.
Actually, we do.
Yep.
And I think that they are wonderful. And, this vanilla taste, when it's really greatly done, it's wonderful. But Rioja is very complex, and our history is very complex. So I think that now we are doing other type of wine. We are recovering whites. So 1/3 of the surface 30 years ago was white, and now it's only 10%.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago was 5%. So we are recovering whites, and we are starting to do other type. So Viñedos El Pacto it's a different look to our terroir and our history.
Well, there you go, Per. Good answer. So Lisa is asking, how is village wines and Viñedos Singular defined through the new classifications in Rioja?
Well, in this new classification, you have actually what we follow with this Viñedos El Pacto. The first wines are wines from a sub-region, from a particular neighborhood of Rioja. Then we have Villas wine. Actually, Bojo Gallo is El Pacto de Cárdenas, so it's from the Cárdenas village, so it's Villas. And then we have the singular vineyards. I think it's a way of organizing the Rioja wines somehow as it was before. They were calling them Crianza and Reserva. And I explain myself. So you could go to the winery of my grandfather, and he had like many different barrels or deposits where there was one wine that was the main volume, very small volume by the way, but was a blend, and then he was keeping the best plots, maybe for him or for selling at a different price. So this is putting a label and a classification to how it used to be. This, okay, you blend most of the wines from the village, but then you have these 3 your favorite parcels to sell at a higher price. Yeah, because they're better.
So how big is the production of this one?
It's only 5,400 bottles.
Yeah.
And it depends on the vintage,
sure.
Of course.
So beautiful. It's very complex, obviously.
I think the nose is very charming.
It is
so
charming.
You have this super flower
It's
again.
the garnacha.
Yeah, but it's the garnacha.
But
You know, garnacha can be very, very, very versatile. And garnachas from Mediterranean, from continental Spain, they're totally different. I don't say better or worse, they're just different. And I think high elevation garnachas that you could find mainly in Rioja, a little bit in Navarra, but mainly in Rioja, they have this perfume, this, you know, Mediterranean herbs, balsamic notes, which, you know, make it the cherry, because if you go to Mediterranean, the cherry of the garnacha is a very licorice cherry. But in this case, this is a very just right, you know, maybe even under matured cherry, so very tasty.
Now, well, garnacha to me is always a very charming type of grape, but in different ways, as you say. But I really enjoy it. Fredrik is asking, will we see more concrete amphora or stainless steel instead of barrels in the character of modern Rioja?
It's happening.
It's already there.
It's happening. I think that we don't have to be affected that much by fashion, by trends, and we don't have to say no to barrels, because it's a great way of aging the wines, okay, and to give complexity.
Sure.
But definitely what we are looking for is to more delicate style. So therefore, abuse of oak is over, at least for some decades, because trends go and come back, okay? But right now, I think Rioja is looking for purity, these new Riojas, and we are part of this movement.
Definitely.
So then it makes sense. Concrete, amphoras. Actually, in this range, with this, so we use concrete in this one. In this one, we vinify in concrete, then it ages in a foudre. And then we have one of the top wines of this range, which part of it was in amphora.
Okay.
So.
And where do you buy the amphora from?
So
are they made in Spain?
Yeah. So well, actually, it's funny because in Rioja used to be an important, I don't know how to,
Like
alfarería. I don't know how to say it in English. So where
they make the clay, the terracottas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was actually my family had some. Part of my mom's family used to, but right now the main for amphoras is in Catalonia. Is where they make the most.
So finally, with this wine, then, what would you eat
with this wine?
Or is this more of a wine that you need to sit and think? And
I think that this wine exactly. I think this is a bottle. First of all, that you need time. So I think it evolves. And I think this is a wine with a great conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, this is a one that I like to have many times after lunch. Okay. And having with cheese or maybe chocolate.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So this is I think it's a great. It's how normally I like to have it.
So an afternoon cheese wine.
Yeah.
You say.
Because I like, you know,
I love it.
Long lunches that start and finish very late, and I think this is a great wine for having this this conversation after lunch.
It's a beautiful wine. Well, I think this has been super exciting. It's always nice to have people in the studio to have a chat with. You've been brilliant, by the way. I think everyone understands that you're a guy that knows a lot, and you have a great passion for what you do, and I think it's important as well to have like a new generation doing things in a very classical region to move things forward, to shake things up a bit, and still, as you say, you still drink and enjoy your Grand Reservas even though you don't make them in this way or in this project. And I think it's important to have both. Absolutely. If you don't have you know, progression, you will you will end up with something completely
wine
different.
For me, it's my life. So everything around, my wife works with me, my family works with me, and it's all about my past, and I hope my future, my children will decide on the future. And I think that if we don't understand that wine is diversity, we're wrong. So I mean, of course, this is a wonderful way, but the Grandes Reservas, that today we can open a bottle of You know, I've been lucky enough to open a bottle of 1912.
Wow.
You know, this is
and that's also drinking history.
And it's drinking history. So we should not say no to this and yes to that. It's to say yes to diversity and to discover new routes.
100%. I think that was a really nice way of ending this. We always have, as I explained in Sweden, so you wouldn't know, a competition. So the people that have been asking questions, I have a little thing here with some papers in, and I think you need to just take one.
I'll take one. Okay.
And this is now going to be. He took the one right at the top, and I can read if you want to, unless you want to try and read Swedish.
That would be complicated.
Okay, so we have a winner of today's small competition, who's going to win the Syrah glass from Riedel Veloce, and congratulations to Johan Norberg.
Yeah, I'm sure I could not have to say at least as well.
I'm sure. So please, Johan, just send us your details, your address, your information, so we know where to send the glasses. And we're gonna wrap this up by saying thank you so much for you, and a few things for the people watching. Snälla gå in och kika lite grann på winetable.se, där vi har en massa trevliga artiklar och vintips och sånt som ni gärna får kika på. Vi har ju också på lördag någonting som heter Vårsalongen här i Stockholm. Det är på Posthuset och det finns fortfarande biljetter till pass 2, så är man intresserad av att gå dit och prova en massa vin så är det fritt fram att leta biljetter på vår hemsida. Känner man att man inte gärna åker till Stockholm utan hellre åker till Malmö, så gör vi samma sak den 17 maj där nere. So that was the last bit in Swedish. Thank you so much. I'm going to choose one. I'm going with the one that's going to be launched tomorrow. Sure. I mean, that's obviously.
You know, tomorrow I will be happy. I'm going to go and buy one because I'm very happy that, because you have to understand that for us that we work the field, we are nothing if we don't have you communicating.
True.
Drinking our wine, so you know it's gonna be very proud for me to go to the store and to buy a bottle of our wine.
Maybe you should go and sleep in a tent outside, so you can be the first one.
Yeah, the first one.
Cheers, and thank you so
Salud.
much, Richi.
Skål.
Thank you, and cheers to you. Bye.
Salud.